welcome you all to listen to Meredith Whitfield today. We're very happy to have her here. And give you a little bit of background. She's going to talk about retail strategy. And she's been here before, and she's come back. This is, I think, her third or fourth visit to Wesleyan. So we're very thrilled to have her. She's the Senior Vice President for Cantor Retail, and she leads shopper insights and apparel retailing research and content development. She has extensive experience. She travels all the time, helps retailers and suppliers leverage shopping insights and other primary research data to improve their market performance. She's worked at retail companies in market research, strategic planning, sales development roles, and she has a strong background in industry and company analysis, competitive positioning, and online retailing. And this is a very exciting time for us to be listening to what she has to say, because we're kind of wondering what's going on with retailing. And I hope she'll give us some ideas. Mary Brett has a BA in economics from Smith College, and she has an MBA from the University of Oklahoma. So let's all welcome her.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you guys taking the time, and I know each and every one of you would be here even if it wasn't required for class, right? Right? Yeah. Nods. Just a nod now. Okay, good. As Professor Manter indicated, we're going to talk a little bit about what the retail landscape is going to look like over the next few years as retailers need to start thinking about tearing down the walls. And what I mean by that is I know that you've been talking a lot, studying a lot about what's happening with online retailing and the evolution of bricks and mortar retailing and how that's going to change over the next few years. I think it's certainly no secret that online retailing is becoming a more prevalent way to shop. And for those of you in the room, it's probably even kind of a foreign concept to think about a world when you couldn't shop online, given that online retailing has been around probably for most of your lives as shoppers. But the vast majority of retail sales are still transacted in bricks and mortar environments. But that doesn't mean they're immune from what's happening online. Certainly your expectations as a shopper, your parents' expectations as shoppers, everyone's expectations as shoppers are being influenced by the kinds of things that they're doing online. And just really kind of the information, the experience, that interaction with online, not only retailers, but a variety of others such as the Googles and the Yahoos and the Apples of the world who are increasingly becoming more a part of what we do from a commerce perspective. So I want to just kind of share what that means for store-based retailing as we think about how they need to evolve to deal with a world when retailing is really less defined by the boundaries of four walls of a store. So again, it's certainly no secret that online is becoming more of one of the key ways that we all get shopping done. And again, for most of you in the room, the idea that online shopping is becoming an increasingly prevalent is probably kind of a foreign concept, given that it's probably been a part of your core life as a shopper, really, since you started shopping. But this is a data set that we track over time, which really looks at the percent of shoppers who are doing shopping at least once a month in a number of different retail venues. And if you look at the trends over the past few years, with online shopping being that yellow line there, you see that it's only very recently become a kind of a mainstream location to do shopping, really within just the past couple of years, where you had significantly more shoppers each and every month in a power center, those shopping centers that are anchored by a Walmart or a Target or a Kohl's, and a lot of the category big box retailers, or a strip center where you might go to your local Kroger or Giant Eagle. Those really were kind of the two predominant shopping venues as recently as just a few years ago. And you see that as online has become more prevalent, kind of converging toward the mainstream. So it's definitely, it has become a more prevalent part of shoppers' shopping routines. And when we look, what does that mean on a category by category basis? When we look at the percent of sales that are transacted online versus in a bricks and mortar environment, and we look at that for several points in time, each data set going back to 2001, going all the way to our 2020 forecast, you see that the growth of online has really been pretty dramatic and growing across categories at different rates, albeit. You see some of the categories over here on the left, some of those usual suspects, those things that you would be most likely to turn to online first, whether it's computer hardware, software, electronics, music, videos, computer software, those types of things definitely have seen kind of a different rate of growth, a different rate of uptick in terms of how much sales are going through online. But you see that same pattern is repeating itself all the way down to the end, where you have the consumables categories that are going to be last to go online and are very infrequently purchased online now vis-a-vis the other categories. But the bottom line is that online share of spending is growing. The growth has been pretty dramatic, and we see the pattern of growth pretty similar across categories, though at differing rates over time. But despite that growth, despite the fact that more shoppers are shopping online in any given month and that sales growth is increasing, the demise of the store is greatly exaggerated. I think you could probably pretty easily identify articles from, as old as a decade or so ago, predicting that, 50% of all sales will go online, the store is dead, the mall is dead. But that's clearly not what happened over this past decade, really the first year of online shopping, and it's not what we predict or expect over the next decade. I think the idea that increasingly shoppers are going to anticipate and expect that they can transact and interact with the brands and the retailers that they care about in an omni-channel way. And when I say omni-channel, that really means that the experience that a shopper has at that retailer or with that brand is pretty consistent across channels, consistent regardless of how they're interacting or with that retailer or with that brand, whether it's on a mobile device, whether it's at the store, whether it's going online through a computer, regardless of how shoppers interact with that brand, they're going to expect and anticipate that experience is similar, and we anticipate and expect that the retailers that ultimately survive and thrive in a more omni-channel environment are going to be those that understand this very concept. So increasingly, the clear message for store-based retailers is that they are going to have to evolve beyond those four walls. Now, before we start thinking about what are the key things that those retailers need to do to really survive and thrive in an omni-channel world, is to kind of get a sense of what does the retail landscape look like today from a store-based perspective. And this is a framework that I think can be very helpful in terms of organizing what the retail landscape looks like today. We at Kantar Retail believe that every store-based retailer has a home quadrant. It's a harder phrase to say than I realized. Home quadrant on this graph. This graph really just divides up the world of retail based on two key things, kind of the depth and the breadth of what they sell. So going along the horizontal axis, it's the depth, the kinds of things that they sell. Is it a shallow assortment? Is it just really a handful of categories that are focused on, or is it really a broader set of categories and alternatives in each category? And then when we look at the breadth, is it narrow or is it wide? Is it kind of a specialist, or is it a retailer that kind of offers kind of everything from soup to nuts? And we have given each of these quadrants a name that starts with E. It's a helpful tip whenever you're creating frameworks, kind of get that way to help people to kind of remember it. But let's start with the efficiency, which is the upper right-hand quadrant. The retailers that operate in this quadrant, and kind of the poster child for this is Walmart. They have a lot of categories, so they have wide breadth, right? They carry everything from groceries to clothes to home improvement to sporting goods to toys and on and on and on. And then within each one of those categories, a fair number of alternatives. So it's a one-stop shop across a wide variety of things. Then if we kind of continue around clockwise, let's go to the expertise quadrant. This would be a retailer that's relatively focused and doesn't have that wide breadth of categories. But what they do have, they have a lot in that category. And a good poster child for this expertise quadrant is Home Depot. Think about Home Depot. It's just home improvement, right? But they have everything you can possibly imagine related to home improvement. So what they're really selling, or their home quadrant, their key positioning is all about product and service around one particular product category. So you can throw any of kind of those category killers, those big box specialists in here. It's Home Depot, it's Lowe's, it's Best Buy. You guys can probably think of a handful of others that you would throw into this quadrant. Continuing around clockwise, the easy to shop, the easy quadrant. This is a retailer that has relatively few categories and not a lot of selection in that category. A good poster child for this quadrant, the good kind of prototypical example, is the convenience store. You pretty much know what's in there. It's not, it's confined pretty much to a lot of the good vices in life. It's sodas and it's snack foods and it's kind of other quick kind of meal kind of things. But it's pretty narrow in terms of what they offer, and they don't have a lot of choice, right? That's not, if you want to look at 20 different peanut butters, you know that you can't get that at the convenience store. You're lucky if you're going to find Jif, or you're going to find Peter Pan. That's it. Not a lot of choices. And then the last quadrant is what we've entitled the enticing quadrant. This is a retailer that has a relatively wide selection of categories, but not a lot in each category. And this is a retailer that really kind of banks on, or really kind of leverages the fact that they can entice you into the store because it's a very high-moving, high-frequency, high-rotating kind of assortment, the enticing retailer. I think a good example for this is the apparel soft goods retailer, Off-Price, or TJ Maxx. Right? They have a lot of categories. They have men's, they have women's, they have children's, they have some home, but it's not going to be the same kind of depth that you would find at a Macy's or at some other retailer that kind of focuses and provides a lot of choices. So if we think about this as, here's the retail landscape today, you probably can think of, the 4 or 5 retailers that you shop the most and figure out where they would belong on this graph. But when you think about if retailers operating kind of in the real world, right, not online, in the real world, there are kind of boundaries to what they can do. And 2 of those boundaries really center around these 2 ideas. At a certain point, you can't add more categories. I mean, goodness knows, a big Walmart supercenter is big enough as it is. You just kind of run out of room at a certain point in terms of, what shoppers are willing to tolerate, what can you sell in any given environment. So that's one of the real world boundaries. Second real world boundary is just kind of the cost of carrying that much inventory. At a certain extent, it just gets difficult to carry more categories, more selection, more depth within those categories. Because what happens then is you start adding some of those items that belong to the so-called long tail. If you guys aren't familiar with that concept, Google it, look it up. But the idea that there are a lot of things that really are just a handful of shoppers are really going to be interested in. There might be demand aggregated across the entire country or a broader geography, but in any one location, you're not going to sell a lot of kind of esoteric foreign films, or you're not going to sell a lot of size 11 women's shoes. So it's these things that might have demand that are big enough to support a business when you aggregate geographies, but not in any one store. And there's no reason, there's no ROI in terms of carrying that inventory in a store. So those are the real world boundaries. But what's happened in a world that is increasingly omnichannel, increasingly online, is that those boundaries are dramatically altered. Really, those boundaries don't even exist in the online world, which is going to require stores kind of to wake up. And we'll move next into talking about what it is that those store-based retailers need to do, but let's first kind of take a look at, pretty systematically, one by one, how those boundaries have been destroyed. So if you think about this whole idea of what Amazon has, they've pretty much destroyed the large box assortment because they can deliver superior economics on those slow turn SKUs. For Walmart to be in stock on an esoteric foreign movie, they'd have to be in over 3,000 stores, right? At least one copy of that movie. For Amazon to be in stock in that movie, they literally only need one. They only need one because they know that the demand for that's going to be pretty small, and so they can have an infinite number of items. One of the most frequently asked questions we get from some of our clients is really how many SKUs are they selling at Amazon? We don't know for sure, but we're quite confident that it's some significant multiple of what you would find in a standard supercenter or any other big box. So that boundary doesn't exist anymore. So real world retailers are going to have to compete and kind of figure out a way to coexist with an Amazon that can have an infinite selection. Second step, if you think about this bottom right corner, remember that was the expertise. A lot of the reason why you would go to a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a Best Buy or any one of those category killer superstores is because they know more about that category than anyone else, and probably you did before you got involved in that category, right? If you're starting a home improvement project, you're a home improvement novice, 10 years ago, you went to Best Buy to figure out, how do I get this? How do I change a faucet? How do I wallpaper? How do I do? Whatever. But when you think about the way that information, and I know it's an increasingly foreign concept as the audiences I talk to get younger and younger and younger, because this has been, again, a part of your life for your whole life. But if you think about the breadth and depth of information that's available to you online, you don't need that expertise of Home Depot anymore. You can go online and Google and figure it out, and you don't have to go into the store to get that expertise. So a retailer like a Home Depot or a Lowe's is going to have to figure out, how do I, when my advantage, my competitive distinction is increasingly being eroded by the availability of information. What do I do to compete? How do I compete? So we're gonna talk about how an expertise retailer needs to operate in a world without boundaries. If we move to the upper left, kind of the third, this was the enticing quadrant, remember? Where you had that kind of new, ever-changing, really call to urgency kind of assortment, because you had to go there on a regular basis to see what was new. Well, you have all kinds of models out there that aren't necessarily even strictly retail related, but are more about marketing and communication that give you that same kind of thrill of the find. I threw Groupon up here, but it could be Groupon, or it could be any of the daily deal sites like Rue La La. You guys familiar with these? Rue La La or Gilt or Zulily, Jack Threads, headquartered in Grandview. Any of those sites that provide a new assortment of goods on a daily basis, new sales. So there's that sense of being, going to the stores really to really see what's new, that's increasingly eroding as a competitive advantage in the real world. And then the fourth step is this whole idea of convenience. Shoppers are definitely kind of rethinking what it means to be convenient, and shoppers, I think, are increasingly thinking about different ways of getting goods, and they don't necessarily need that quick, easy, in and out small format store. So we'll talk about the idea that in that easy quadrant, really all retailers need to think about how they maximize speed and convenience. So all of those barriers have fallen down, but also those two kind of barriers that were boxing in our box. Again, now there is really, when you talk about what Jeff Bezos has done from Amazon perspective, the fact that he, to be in stock only needs one of an item. So he really has, been able to capitalize, and Amazon has been able to capitalize on that, as has all of online retailing. That's not really a boundary. It's not really a barrier. In the online world. And the same thing, with some of those execution challenges that you had in terms of at a certain point you run out of space. As technology is changing, as transportation options are changing, and two, as consumer expectations are changing about how immediately they need things. It's definitely changing the art of the possible in terms of how quickly we get goods to consumers. So when you think about what's happening in the physical world, in those bricks and mortar retailers, kind of every way they look, the boundaries or the things that really helped define and confine them to a particular business model are eroding. And again, to compete and to kind of keep pace with what's happening in this world, we argue that retailers are going to have to kind of, in each of these quadrants, regardless of where your home base is, think about changing and shifting and really kind of making, rethinking what it is that is the kind of the fundamental proposition that defines what you are as a retailer. So the way that I would kind of position this is if when you think about that world of retailing is defined by the 4E map, that really kind of posits that the fundamental problem is to figure out which categories to sell and the depth and breadth of categories you're going to feature. That really goes away in an online world. And so the new challenge for retailers, whether you operate online or in bricks and mortar, is to really understand what each of the need states shoppers had. What is it they're trying to accomplish when they were interacting with the retailer in any one of those quadrants? What is it they were trying to accomplish? And how can you optimize kind of serving and delivering on those needs in a retail world without walls? And that leads to 4 clusters of capability. Enticing, and we're going to talk about these for the rest of the time together. Enticing, the way that we think retailers need to think about that now is wow. Easy to shop becomes now. Everyone needs to think about speed and convenience. Expertise becomes smart, and efficiency becomes right. So let's start by looking, so the 4 E's become wow, now, right, smart. Let's start by looking at wow. And I think one of the ways to think about wow in a world without walls is to understand the value of curation and how, as a bricks and mortar retailer, you can make that idea of curation, providing an edited assortment that's very targeted to an audience that you understand and know well. How can you make that work, and how can you use that as your competitive advantage, your key differentiating factor? The retail competencies that will be necessary for retailers who want to make that their home quadrant. You have to deliver on the experience. For a brick and mortar retailer who wants to operate here, they have to figure out how to make going into that store more compelling than a website is easy. So if it's easy and quick to buy something online, what's a retailer going to have to do to get you to go to the store to make that transaction instead? Key retail competency. Second one is really kind of this reliable, consistent, efficient execution. Because when shoppers come in the store, they want to know, want to have confidence that they're going to find what they're looking for when they go into that store. So it's going to be important for retailers who operate there to be in stock and make the merchandise visible and visually appealing on the shelf. And I think probably most important for the key retail competency in this quadrant is literally having the right stuff. It's still going to be vital because these are retailers, again, that need to think about getting a very edited assortment that speaks to a very specific targeted audience. And when I say the value of curation, what I mean by that is really kind of understanding and creating demand, whether it's by using tastemakers, curators, or content creators, whether it's those experts from whatever realm of society that you are really focused on as a retailer. It could be a chef, it could be a designer, it could be style experts, athletes, sports figures, whatever. But it's really kind of cutting through the clutter to create demand in a world, again, where shoppers have kind of endless choice. It's the difference of, finding a very edited, curated collection with a specific point of view and a specific aesthetic at one end versus, finding, something that has infinite number of, kind of an infinite number of ways to slice and dice and combine, the t-shirt as represented by the t-shirt on the end. So some of the retailers that we see are really kind of working on curation. I just wanted to give you guys some examples of things that we're seeing kind of across the landscape. This is a retailer, actually operates out of the UK, called 15 Gifts. And what it does, I mean, if you were thinking, I have to buy a gift, you guys are probably going to be moving into buying wedding gifts probably, soon after you get out of college, right? You and all your friends are going to start getting married, and then it's baby gifts, and then it's, so if you're buying a gift, there's a whole world of gifts out there. How do you help a retailer, how do you help a shopper figure out what it is she wants? This website takes you through a specific series of questions. Who are you buying for? What do you want to spend? How would you describe that person? And it comes back with literally 15 items. I kind of did this. I was looking for my nephew and his wife. They're having a baby. And it really takes you through narrowing the world of gifts, right? There's probably an infinite number of things you could get for a baby gift. Narrows it down to 15 gifts. If you don't like that gift, say no. It'll bring up another one that meets the criteria. So it gives you some options and learns from you as you go through this process. So it's curation by narrowing, finding something, that's very helping you kind of in this, instead of boiling the ocean, kind of bringing it down to kind of a more defined set that you can really manage and deal with. Another retailer that has done this in the bricks and mortar world, this is a retailer operating out of New York. I have no idea how hopefully they're doing well over the course of the past week. But they definitely have eyes on expansion. So I think they're moving out to Atlanta, Dallas, some of those big markets. Probably be a while. Cincinnati is my guess is where they'll be first in Ohio. But it's called Sea Wonder. And the idea here is really to have kind of a personal, engaging, fun shopping experience. You can see it has a very defined aesthetic. It's actually run by the ex-husband of designer Tory Burch. So for those of you women in the room who love Tory Burch shoes, this is her ex-husband. He does have kind of a Tory Burch aesthetic. They're also embroiled in an interesting legal battle, which has been fun to follow in WWD. But it's a concept, again, that is really editing and narrowing the assortment to a specific style and design aesthetic, and really aiming to make that shopping experience more engaging, more fun. Remember, part of what this quadrant, retailers in this quadrant need to do is to make the experience in the store more fun than shopping on a website is easy. So really kind of encouraging shoppers, really drawing shoppers in, making shoppers, really kind of creating that desire, that demand creation. One of the things that they have done to kind of personalize the shopping experience is they have this panel in the dressing room which allows you to choose the music that you're listening to as you're trying on clothes. It also can adjust the lighting. So if you've ever been in a dressing room, men and women alike, been in a dressing roam, tried something on, and then wear it outside, you realize, wow, this is a lot more red than I thought, it's a lot brighter, or it doesn't show up, but you can choose, am I going to be wearing this outside? Am I going to be wearing this in a fluorescent office environment? Am I going to be wearing it to a nightclub? But really trying to make that experience, adding value to the try-on experience, something, again, that you can't get if you're shopping online. A couple of other retailers, again, that are really kind of capitalizing on this idea of curation, and some of these are from around the world. This one from Sweden, Middx, they send you 5 times at the beginning of the week, they send you 5 dinner recipes and the ingredients to make those 5 meals. So instead of just offering a full grocery assortment online, really focused on helping you achieve something each and every night, getting that dinner. Getting dinner on the table. And then Germany, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Cookhouse, it bills itself as the walk-in cookbook store. And instead of having a typical grocery store with aisles up and down of products that somewhat, quite often can seem to be arranged almost at random, they have different tables where it's featuring a specific recipe or a group of recipes, and all the ingredients for that recipe are right there. So you don't have this wandering up and down, half a dozen aisles to get the half a dozen ingredients you need to pull together a meal. It's all right there. And then operating in the US, Food on the Table kind of helps you, works with you, kind of takes you through the circulars of your local retailers to figure out what you can capitalize on. So this idea of making, kind of curating and kind of defining and narrowing the scope. Want to move now to now. The idea that increasingly, this is the easy quadrant. So retailers that kind of operate in that easy quadrant need to think about morphing to now. And I'd also assert that really all retailers need to think about how do you become more of a speed and convenience retailer. And the key retail competencies that you'll see from the winners who choose to operate in this sector still are going to have very differentiated and focused stores. Most likely, they're going to be smaller, they're going to be more convenient, they're going to be more local, they're going to be more memorable. We've been looking a lot over the past couple years about the rise of new urban retailing. If you have a chance to go to Chicago in the near term, check out what's happening on State Street. City Target, a new Walgreens prototype, really focusing on serving the needs of the immediate neighborhood, as opposed to being a retailer that's more focused on the mass of a broader suburban population. The now retailers will be kind of leading at the forefront in terms of engaging shoppers digitally, but they're also going to be all about managing shoppers' time because the store experience is more efficient, or it's going to be so absorbing, it's going to be more of an experience the shopper feels like that is indeed time well spent. So these are the key retail competencies for now. And some of the examples or some of the ways to kind of think about what kind of competencies or what do retailers need to do in the now sector. It is all about convenience, but there are different aspects of convenience. I think right now sometimes when we say convenience, we immediately default to the 7-Elevens, the UDFs of the world, those small, quick in-and-out stores. But even given the right shopper mindset, a big Walmart can be convenient. If I need to get a lot of things in one place, that's possibly the store for me. So when retailers are contemplating operating in this sector, I think it's important to kind of acknowledge and understand there's different dimensions to retailing or to convenience. It's time, it's assortment, it's intention, what is the shopper trying to accomplish, and its location. And you can work with all of these in different, in different measures, kind of tune up and tune down how you want to appeal to shoppers from a convenience perspective on any of these levers. Some of the things that we're seeing retailers do kind of within this space, one of the more innovative things over the course of the past year has been Neiman Marcus, the upscale luxury department store, who has extended its service. It's known for customer service, kind of in the same way that Nordstrom's is. They created the NM Service app. It's an opt-in app for its core customers, for its very frequent, very loyal customers. But when you opt into this app and you walk into the Neiman Marcus store, it will alert your favorite sales associates that you're in the store. It will actually give a list to you of here's some new arrivals in the store based on your previous history. We have new stock in from this brand. We have new things that will go with what you bought last month, last week, last year. Includes information on those designers, the lines, everything related to those products, and does this because it has a link to your shopping history. So Neiman Marcus probably wouldn't have been in your mind to put that in that convenience bucket. But when you think about what they are doing and how they're evolving their go-to-market strategy to really be more about speed and convenience, this is a great example of how they are doing that. Kind of staying a little bit in the same sector of retail, when we think about Sephora.com, the makeup retailer, the beauty retailer, they have really kind of, in terms of their multi-channel presence, have really, when they relaunched their website earlier this year, included a lot of options that really improve the shopping experience regardless of channel choice, the new face of Sephora.com. One of the things that they added was the ability to pre-shop for your trip in store. So you can check store-based inventory online, but you can also, specifically talk to someone in that store, through live chat or email to find out what else do you have that's related to this product. Is it worth my time to come into the store? Kind of really making that kind of a faster, quicker kind of experience. But if you don't want to shop in the store, they've made it faster, simpler shopping in terms of the home shopping, home delivery, the shipping options. So the idea is really becoming more of a speed and convenience retailer because you're improving the shopper's experience regardless of where they choose to shop. And they're doing it beyond just what they're doing on the website. This is one of their stores in New York, in the Meatpacking District, was the first store to go to 100% mobile checkout, no cash wrap at all in the store. So once you pick your product and you're working with the sales associate, you can pay for it there on the spot. And we're seeing this mobile checkout roll out to more and more kinds of retailers. Urban Outfitters is making a heavy push to roll out mobile checkout. Seen it at Nordstrom Rack as well. At Nordstrom Rack, they actually have, the sales associate that's working the dressing room can check you out right there. So once you try it on, make your decision, check it out. There's no waiting in a long line. Also from a retailer perspective, they're really capitalizing, not giving you much of a chance to have a doubt, to have that lingering doubt. Is this really the right thing? Do I want to spend this much? I tried it on. I love it. Here's someone who can take my money. Much higher likelihood that they will ultimately close that sale. Another thing that we're increasingly seeing, it kind of about a year and a half ago, started seeing these kind of what we would call virtual shopping walls, where consumables retailers, or in this case, eBay, put up a representative selection of products with the QR codes, with kind of the barcodes that go with that product. And those shoppers who are wandering around, in this case, it's in a train station, it's in a subway station, seeing it in airports as well. Those shoppers with a mobile phone can scan the QR code and either add that product to a list, or actually make an order for that product and arrange to have that product delivered. Seeing a lot in grocery stores. Peapod, this is in the Chicago area as well as Philadelphia area, in the train stop. So on the way to or from work, make your grocery list, submit your order, to pick up after work on the way home, or have it delivered to your house. So this idea of, how do I make it faster? How do I make the shopper's interaction with me as a retailer easier? And we're seeing a lot more retailers think about turning that waiting time into shopping time. I'm going to skip a couple of these. This is a local one, so I think it's worth, again, remember we're talking about speed and convenience. How do you help get goods to retailers that are somehow sometimes tricky for retailers to get? How do you make it easier for them to get access? This is Green Bean Delivery, which is here in the Columbus market as well as others, and a New York-based business called Farm to Baby. What both of them do kind of in slightly different ways, but is aggregate that locally grown produce that everyone would love to buy, but it requires a special trip to the farmer's market or a special trip to different, it's not necessarily part of your regular grocery shopping trip. But you sign up for Green Bean Delivery once a week. You get a basket of whatever's fresh that week, the freshest stuff aggregated from all of the local farms that it would be almost impossible for you to visit. Farm to Baby does the same kind of thing in New York, but they're actually turning that food into organic, natural baby food, and then delivering it to families in the New York and New Jersey area. So again, this idea of speed and convenience, there's lots of ways that retailers who we wouldn't historically have classified as convenience retailers are going to have to think about being a now retailer in a world without walls. Moving on to the third quadrant, right. All about the right product, the right place, the right time. This is that expertise quadrant. The expertise quadrant, all those category killers, those big box superstores who are seeing their competitive advantage disappear by the advent of kind of 24/7 availability to information. So the job of these retailers is increasingly going to be about getting it right and making those retailers feel smart about what it is they're purchasing, and smart that they're purchasing it in the store environment. So the key retail competencies for the retailers who choose to kind of operate in this home quadrant are all going to be about making sure that the clarity of your brand remains, the integrity of your brand kind of remains. And the integrity of that brand then will allow them to figure out where do they have license to expand. What is it that shoppers are willing to let them offer beyond their kind of initial mission? These retailers are going to have to know and engage their shoppers, whether they do so by kind of analytical, kind of big data ways or more intuitive ways. It's going to be a key to understanding how do I make the shoppers in my stores, how do I make them feel smart? And retailers in this quadrant are probably going to have to be more collaborative with suppliers than retailers in any other quadrant. And that's because a lot of what they're selling is important for shoppers to understand, how to use the products, what makes sense, really kind of provide those information and product guides, and retailers will most likely be relying on suppliers to help them provide that information in the store. So some of the things that we're seeing kind of going on in this space, right product, right place, right time. It's all about kind of having a presence across all of the channels. Threadless, which is another Chicago-based retailer. You guys may know them from online. Their specialty is graphic t-shirts sourced by the design community. Had really been only an online-only retailer, one store in Chicago, but wanted to have the ability to connect with their shoppers wherever their shoppers were. So for the past year or so have been testing out a couple of kiosks Some of these were in malls, some of these were in grocery stores, on college campuses, and also partnering with the Gap to make their products more widely available kind of in a physical sense. So you see, retailers in this quadrant trying to make sure and figure out how they can use all channels to their advantage. Another example from the apparel space as well, Under Armour, which is probably a familiar brand to most of you. They have outlet stores, and they have tested a number of full-price stores and really had a hard time making that work, the economics of a full-price Under Armour store work. And they decided to they still have a handful of those full price stores, and they're still continuing with their outlet price strategy, but they decided that we really need to think about using our stores, when we expand our store base, using it much more selectively. And this was their mountain store, which opened last fall during ski season in Vail. But the idea was really to highlight some of the underappreciated, the under-distributed parts of their portfolio that they didn't necessarily have the right visibility or enough visibility in a sporting goods outlet like a Middx or an REI or a Gander Mountain. Really hard to get the visibility they needed for these kind of niche kind of products. But if you're in Vail, and their mountain line is going to be very relevant to everyone shopping in that store. So it's all about the right product at the right place, and really leveraging their expertise with the customer, with the shopper, when he or she actually needs that expertise. Another part of the right equation is going to be really connecting with shoppers again. It's about connecting with shoppers in a way that makes those shoppers feel smart about shopping for you. And we've seen a number of players over the course of the past year really rethink or introduce loyalty programs that really kind of connect with their shopper base in a new way. Typically, a lot of loyalty programs are all about how much you spend, and you get a discount based on how much you spend. Some of the kind of more innovative aspects of the Express Next loyalty program, you can get points by interacting with the brand through Twitter and in stores and online. So it's really a loyalty program for a new generation, for you guys, that really kind of speaks to the way that you are more likely to interact with a brand, or the broader ways that you're likely to interact with a brand than just purchasing that brand. And likewise, Bloomingdale's kind of expanded its loyalty program to include other forms of payment. Nordstrom did so as well. So it's not just the Nordstrom card, not just the Bloomingdale's card. It's really being more inclusive, really kind of trying to draw in those customers that have the potential to be kind of core brand loyalists, but in a different way. The last one we wanted to talk about was retailers that are going to operate kind of in this smart quadrant. It's really hard, some of the core competencies here, part of it, again, is making shoppers feel smart about what they're buying and providing the right value. So it's going to be these retailers, financial competence is kind of a given, but it's going to be these retailers because a lot of what they're doing is going to be predicated on offering the right price and offering the right value. Financial management is going to be key. This quadrant is a lot about the value perception. So it's this idea of whether the value is based literally on price or something beyond price. It needs to be clear. It needs to be a centerpiece of all the marketing and communication with shoppers. And to operate in this quadrant, retailers are really going to kind of have to be masters of promotion, whether it's distinguishing their own brand and their offer from others. Really, it's going to have to make it worth the shopper's investment to shop the retailer. So some of the key things, some of the key examples of retailers who are going to be, remember this was the expertise quadrant morphing to smart. Expertise, Home Depot was solidly in that quadrant, but as that quadrant, the boundaries of that quadrant kind of fall away and it becomes more about being smart, Home Depot has really been focusing on their more savings, more doing brand promise, and it really has been rolling out new opening price point private brands to really kind of emphasize that more savings and as well as the more doing part of their brand promise. I'm almost done. I know you guys have class, but thanks for coming. The idea of value, again, value is going to be important in this quadrant. And the key for retailers that operate in this quadrant is to really think about the fact that value has multiple characteristics and it can manifest itself in various ways. Sometimes value, what I think is a value is different to me than it is to you. Value can be very dynamic too, depending on the shopper's need state. What I'm willing to pay for a Coke on a hot day is different than I'm willing to pay for a 12-pack when my teenage kids are having a bunch of friends over and I need to get as much soda as I can in the house for the least possible price. It also can be scaled. It can manifest itself in different parts of the store differently than it is across the entire concept of the store. So the idea that retailers that are operating in this quadrant are going to have to manage the very dynamic aspects of price and value, just as those who are operating in the convenience quadrant are going to have to think about how you move all those levers related to convenience. One of the, I think, kind of cutting edge and new ways that we're kind of experimentation with loyalty programs and providing that right value is the Safeway Just For You program, operating first in the West Coast and moving to the other Safeway divisions. It's not too dissimilar from those of you who have a Kroger card or a Giant Eagle card, but the goal of Just For You is to provide offers that are targeted to specific shoppers, driven by your purchase history, partially funded by supplier partners, but really kind of making the deals much more personalized, much more relevant to you as a shopper, to really hopefully kind of enhance that loyalty and really provide a loyalty component to a discount card, to a frequent shopper card program, which quite often are really just focused on savings. But this is an idea of making a shopping experience more relevant to you. So to kind of sum it up, I think just about on time. The idea is, clearly when you look at what's happening kind of in the online world and how it really has changed the rules, changed the boundary, changed what's available to shoppers, so therefore kind of changes our expectations as shoppers of retailers in the bricks and mortar world. It's clear that the future isn't what it used to be. Those competitive dynamics are infinitely more complex. So now as a retailer, I'm not just competing against like retailers in the same trade area, in the same mall, within the same 1 or 2 mile trading radius. So I'm competing with a lot more options. But I'm also competing for shoppers' attention and for shoppers' time, even things that stretch beyond stores and stretch beyond retail. When you think about an offer like Groupon as kind of taking some of our discretionary time, some of our discretionary spending. So the key things that we're going to see, I think, for those retail players who really kind of survive and thrive in this environment, those retailers who operated in the enticing quadrant, they're going to have to be more about just the enticing offer. They're going to have to think about the full experience, and they're going to need those wow factors everywhere in the store. That easy quadrant morphs to now. Everyone needs to think about how to be a convenience retailer. How do I make the shopping experience more efficient for shoppers, more effective for shoppers? How do I enhance the speed and the convenience of my shopping offer? Efficiency is only going to be an advantage if it's the right product. So when you think about the vast selection of a Walmart, much of which isn't relevant to you, but there's other places where the vast selection indeed can be relevant. So it's all about having the right product at the right place. And then last but not least is that expertise quadrant. It really needs to work in context, kind of putting it in the contextual environment for the shopper. So, shoppers need to be smart about the experience of shopping there. It's not just about having the expertise, because shoppers are much more likely to have that expertise or have other alternatives for getting that expertise than spending time in the store today. So with that, I think I'm wrapped up, and I'm happy to hang around for questions.
Hi. I'd like to go back to your initial point about online sales increasing so rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
I found it interesting that you didn't touch on the tax issue that's going on with online sales. and the implications that that has with macroeconomically with hiring and employing people. And specifically its impact on these big box retailers like Best Buy and Home Depot that you've been talking about that are now downsizing.
Right. Interestingly, from the tax perspective, if you follow how Amazon's position on this over time, Amazon clearly in the initial years of its existence, kind of banked on, even though they didn't necessarily explicitly market to this, but they kind of banked on the fact that it was tax-free selling in most cases, right? And a lot of times that's why, you would go online versus somewhere else. But interestingly, in the past year or two, as they've fought more battles with more states about taxing, and as they've also thought about what is their future, part of their future is being able to have same day, next day, instantaneous, almost immediate delivery. And to do that, they know they have to have a physical presence in everywhere they want to do business. Right now, they're doing Amazon Fresh delivery in the Seattle area. In a number of other places, they're testing various same-day things. They have Amazon lockers in a number of markets where if you want to order something from them, but you don't want it delivered to your house, you can say, I want it delivered to this locker that's at the Walgreens that's on my way home from work, and you send me an email when it's delivered, and I'll pick it up. So they've actually kind of reversed kind of their lobbying efforts, and now they're actively advocating for all online retailers to be taxed kind of across the board. So kind of really taking away that competitive advantage, because they want their next competitive advantage to be all about physical presence and ability to get goods to shoppers more quickly. So I think we will see kind of an evolution and a resolution of this over the next few years. And I think the expectation should be as shoppers that we're going to have to pay taxes regardless of where we purchase goods. So I think that will ultimately kind of neutralize in terms of a competitive advantage. In the back.
I really enjoyed that those 4 points that you gave us. I have it down here. So wow, now, right, and smart.
Right.
And I was wondering, based on your experience, which one do you think is becoming increasingly challenging with your clients to conquer? Which one of those 4?
I think each one of the quadrants does indeed have challenges. I think when you factor in, something we really didn't even talk about too much today, when you factor in that a lot of the retail concepts out there in the bricks and mortar world were really really grew up to serve me and your parents, the boomers, when we were all in, very specific life stages, household, family formation years. And certainly your parents can tell you, I can tell you as my kids get older, I don't need as many sections of the Walmart store now as I did when my kids were younger. I'm not doing the birthday parties. I don't have the, I don't have the toy thing. There's just a lot of parts of the store I don't need. It's not as relevant to me as a store anymore. And I think what you're seeing kind of on all that, that right-hand side of the original graph, the expertise and the efficiency retailers, they're increasingly going to have to justify to the new generation of shoppers, which is you guys, Gen Y, they're going to have to justify to those shoppers their reason for existence. Because I think from the expertise perspective, you guys have access to way more information as you go into your household and family formation life stages. You're not going to need to rely on the retailer to the same degree. I mean, if I just take a simple example, like I didn't know anything about cribs when I walked into the Babies R Us to buy a crib. I guarantee that you will have spent hours online looking for, what's the best thing, from a safety perspective, from a design perspective, from a convertibility perspective, from a sustainability perspective. You will know more about product categories than I ever did. So I think retailers that really traded on that expertise are going to be challenged. And then I think retailers that traded on that efficiency, that ability to offer a lot in one big box, are going to be challenged. Because I think one way that we're going to see shopping patterns evolve is that things that are regularly consumed on kind of a rate that's predictable. So whether it's paper towels, whether it's macaroni and cheese, whether it's cereal, things that are shelf stable, and you pretty much know I need X number of, Cheerios, oatmeal, whatever. Your generation is going to be much more likely to buy that stuff online, have it delivered to you on an automatic replenishment basis, and then go to the store for the fresh and the perishable and the fun, and that's going to change the dynamics of a typical shopping experience. You're not necessarily going to go around the store up and down every aisle. You might go around the store. There's going to be entire aisles, I think, that will become less relevant to Gen Y. So that leaves all those retailers that really were banking on the fact that they had, everything that you needed in the store, and a lot of the store was devoted to those categories that now are going to be less relevant because more people will be buying those online. So I think it's the efficiency and the expertise that those retailers are the most challenged, because I think a lot of what's happening on the other side, kind of the speed and convenience, and kind of that wow, that's still going to be the fun stuff. That's going to be the stuff that's going to be worth going to the store for. And so I think it's easier to kind of morph in that space. Sure.
So you mentioned just now that stores that really bank on the efficiency having a lot. What do you have to say about something like Walmart, which is still going strong? My personal opinion, I wouldn't think it has much of a wow factor, but yeah. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think part of the issue, if you look at Walmart and you really kind of dive down and understand kind of their levers of growth and how they've been growing, they haven't been generating a ton of growth from their core supercenter format. That's changed a bit in the past year and a half as they've kind of reverted back to their everyday low pricing. But they had several years there where their supercenter was kind of mired in negative comps, negative sales growth. And a lot of their growth was coming internationally. And that's how they were growing. They're, of course, international, given the global economic environment. They're having trouble generating growth there. And so they're increasingly looking at new formats. I think what you see when you look at the Walmarts of the world, when you look at a lot of kind of those big box specialists and the Walmarts, the Targets, the general merchandisers, there's almost no opportunity for them to grow sales by adding stores. There's not. Walmart does have what actually my lead Walmart analyst thinks are kind of over-ambitious goals in terms of adding stores. But a lot of what they're doing, and they'll tell you this, is they're intentionally cannibalizing some of their existing stores because they're kind of going even for that incremental growth they can get by adding new stores in the marketplace. But what they're doing is they're looking. They are, looking at smaller formats. So Walmart Express, Walmart Neighborhood Market. We actually believe Walmart Neighborhood Market will be the fastest growing supermarket retailer, or Walmart Market, I believe is what they call it now, will be the fastest supermarket retailer over the next 5 to 6 years. So you have right now in the U.S. retail market a lot of concepts that are kind of out of their expansion runway. There's just no real way to get growth by adding new stores. So they're trying to optimize the stores that they have now, and they kind of have to work that 4-box model to do so, or they're looking at new concepts. And Chicago, I already gave a plug for Chicago, but there's a lot of interesting things that Walmart is doing. They have almost all of their test concepts are kind of in urban Chicago, and if anyone is going to Chicago and wants to see those stores, because I know that's what young people like to do on vacation, not just middle-aged retail analysts, but I'd be happy to share the list of those store tours in Chicago. You can go. Yeah.
A lot of online clothing retails are trading in the in-store expertise for online expertise through the online chat and chatting with a stylist. Do you think that's going to grow to all types of retail? I
do think you're going to see more of that. Even store-based retailers kind of up that up. If you looked, both J. Crew and Banana Republic have introduced kind of freestyling services over the course of the past year. Topman, Topshop, which is a UK retailer, another one in Chicago, as well as New York and operating in Nordstrom, select Nordstrom stores as well. They not only have this kind of amorphous idea of a stylist that is available, but they actually kind of have a menu of different stylist services that are all free. So it's not just telling you, we can help you, which sometimes, what does that mean? It's kind of intimidating. I don't know how someone can help me, but they can, I can help you with this, this, and this. Organize your wardrobe for vacation, make an appointment to do that. Organize, for a, a special occasion kind of outfit. Organize for this. Organize how to, arrange for a meeting to help understand how to better use accessories. So I think by kind of giving that menu of service options, they're really kind of really educating consumers what they can rely on the store for. So I think you're right that I think that is going to be more prevalent both online and in store environments. Question? Yeah.
Hi. Has Cantor Retail over the course of the recession actually increased in business because companies have sought to become more efficient, or have you had less business?
We've actually we're part of WPP, which is a huge, conglomerate of a gazillion, literally 200 or so advertising agencies, marketing services agencies. And Kantar Retail within the Kantar Group, which is part of WPP, is one of the highest growth rates over the past few years. Part of that has to do with mergers and acquisitions, but part of that has to do with I do think that retailer and supplier companies throughout the recession, as they cut back on some of their kind of information and internal insights and internal consulting functions, they still need that work. So we get it, which is fine. That's good. Yes, Fresh Direct in Amazon. Mm-hmm. I still think the grocery business, in many ways, is really local. So I do think Fresh Direct has the opportunity to maintain its presence in New York as well as, in areas where it might want to expand. I mean, because I do think the grocery business still is. I mean, even if you look at, Kroger, which is the largest pure grocery retailer, they operate a dozen or so different banners, and each of those banners is really different because it's specific to the marketplace in which they operate. So, I do think one of the consequences or one of the characteristics of kind of the online environment, it does offer the opportunity for kind of more niche businesses, more localized businesses, more businesses that really focus on a specialized demand. If you think a lot of businesses that are oriented around a niche product or a niche demand, or something that doesn't appeal to a mass audience, virtually impossible to launch those businesses and sustain those businesses over the long term, in the real world, because the demand is so disaggregated across wider geographies. And so I do think that's one advantage to the online economy. All right, thank you guys. It's great to be here.